and welcome back to KXAN Live. I'm your anchor Esmeralda Zamora, and this Sunday we have our first morning weather Q&A with meteorologist Rich Segal. Rich, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I have to admit, I have a lot of anxiety right now because today is the Super Bowl, and one of the teams that is playing today is a team that I've been rooting for since the 60s,
And which team is that?
and that would be the Philadelphia Eagles.
Woo, well, hopefully the
So
Eagles
I,
get their comeback.
I am just. I probably should have taken today off because I can feel the anxiety just building in me because I take this really seriously, I'm afraid.
I'm sure a lot of people do as well. Today, everyone's going to be at the edge of their seat. But, I believe that everyone should get a chance to win the Super Bowl. So I think the Eagles should win this time, right?
Ooh, well, thank you. I hope so. I hope you're right.
So who are you excited to see during the halftime show?
Oh, you know what? I'll be having fajitas at halftime. I don't pay as much attention to the halftime show as most other people do.
That's my time to get up and dance a little bit to the music that plays.
Kendrick Lamar may be able to satisfy your need to do that today.
Or SZA.
Or SZA, that's right.
More
I learned
excited
about
for
SZA. I learned about SZA earlier.
Yeah, she's great. Well, let's just jump right into our Q&A with your first question that you have for us, and that is, how are normal temperatures figured?
Calculating the normal high and the normal low are done as a 30-year average. So the numbers that we are using now, a normal high today of 66 and a normal low of 45, these numbers have been calculated over a 30-year period that started in 1991 and lasted until 2020. All of the highs and all of the lows, 12 months of those 30 years are put into the computer, the numbers are spit out, and these numbers last for 10 years. The next set of numbers will include the time period of 2001 to 2030. Now, some people are not exactly wanting to use these numbers. They feel it's just a throwaway graphic, but I think it's always interesting to share these numbers. I do. Just as a source of another source to disseminate the weather information for today. For example, we had a high of 71 and the day's not even done yet, but that cold front knocked our temperatures down. And so we look at how that compares to the normal high. We look at how it compares to the normal low. Some people are interested in it, some people are not, but disseminate something that we like to do to add to the weather story.
Oh, and we have your second question now, and that one is, glad to see your pollen numbers are back. How are the pollens counted?
On our roof, we have a machine. It's run by a company called Pollen Sense, and I think I have, oh, you know what? If you if you go into the computer, let's see if this is going to work. And let's see, let's try this. Well, it was working earlier and it's not working now. Technology is fighting me too. It knows that I have anxiety. Anyway, the pollen numbers, we use a company called Pollen Sense, and that helps us. You can get rid of that graphic there and just keep that question up. We use Pollen Sense rather than a local allergist because it shows us the advantages that we have. The allergists don't disseminate pollen counts on the weekend, but our machine does. There's a tape, a sticky tape on the machine that collects all of the pollens that the atmosphere is throwing out. And then using artificial intelligence algorithms, we are able to determine what the numbers are. It's really an easier definition. It takes pictures of pollen under a microscope and uses computer analysis to count them. We know that people are really interested in the pollen numbers, especially during this time of the year because of the cedar counts. And we, one of the things that we noticed this year is that we did not have those quadruple and, the five-figure cedar counts that we've normally had in past years. Those did not materialize, but there is still a little bit of cedar, and we know that people count on us for those cedar counts, I think, more than just about any pollen. But that's how it's done. A tape on the machine collects the pollens that are dispersed into the atmosphere by the trees or the mold or the weeds, and then they are counted computer-wise so that we're not hand counting them because there's a better chance for mistake. And then we get that information. It's on a 24-hour cycle. We collect the pollen and report as of the time period from 6 a.m. yesterday to 5 o'clock this morning. But one of the advantages that we have with our pollen sensor is that you can log on to our website, kxan.com, and go to the allergy tab in the first column, and you can see the 24-hour moving average. And people are prone to say, okay, when did pollen spike in the last 24 hours, and what's the best time for me not to be outdoors, and so that I'm not susceptible to the pollens. And so this is something that we are happy to have. And when the tape runs out, we just put another tape in so that it can collect the sample pollens that we are going to be talking about later on in the broadcast day.
And Rich, I know that it's always different kinds of pollen throughout the year that we see come into Central Texas. As we enter this time of year, what kind of pollens are we seeing out there?
Well, cedar definitely. Cedar will last into this month and maybe linger into March. It's been known to loiter longer than we would like for it to be around. But one of the things that we're also noticing, and we have noticed this over the past few years, is that some of our spring pollens that we normally don't see until March and perhaps even into April, starting to bloom a little earlier. For example, we are seeing some elm and we are seeing some willow. There was one day where we saw some sycamore. The pollen in spring that seems to dominate, and so far we haven't seen it yet, is oak. Oak is probably the second most debilitating pollen of our tree pollens after cedar, of course. And so we're seeing some of those spring pollens develop a little bit earlier. Mold is a year-round. Haven't seen any weeds. Usually the ragweed and the pigweed season end during the fall, maybe into early December. And so right now it's cedar and three other tree pollens that two other tree pollens that showed up today, elm and willow.
And we did see cedar come a little bit early this year too,
Yeah,
right?
it sure did. It started in late November, and that gave us reason to feel a little bit squeamish about the fact that if it's starting this early, those numbers in the 4 and 5 figures may come early. I'm not sure why that happened. In other parts of the viewing area, and specifically up where an allergist with whom we used to interact saw some 4-figure pollen counts in mid-December, but we never saw them materialize here. We had 3-figure cedar counts, but we did not, as far as I can recollect, we did not have any 4-figure counts. But yes, you're right, it did start earlier. Hopefully that means it'll end earlier too, because even at 5 grains per cubic meter today, there are still people that feel the effect of it.
Yeah, especially once it's gone, you still feel those effects, right?
Yes, it does not take much.
Well, our next question, number 3, is your first warning weather forecast shows a brief live picture of a person talking about the weather, and then it disappears quickly.
Right. Now, this appears, as the writer said, on our webpage. It's in the forecast page, and it's the video clip that we show on kxan.com and post that on our web as well. So sometimes if the situation is not perfect, you'll see the first, I don't know, maybe less than 5 seconds of the meteorologist who is giving that forecast. And then it disappears. So I sent this to our IT guy. He's checking on it, and he thought that in the answer that he sent to the viewer that it might have something to do with ad blocker. So they were going to get back to us to see if maybe that was the problem, and so far we've not heard back. But that could be the issue if you're experiencing that. Said it might have something to do with the ad blocker, but if you are experiencing that issue, please let us know so that we can submit this to the IT department for their review and their consideration.
Yeah, and I know we have a couple other things that we're also looking into on our website, so it's all a work in progress, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tech issues. And then the fourth question that we are going to deal with today is something that, and I wish my laptop was working. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, hold on.
Hold on.
Okay, so there's the pollen count, and here is the last one. So you can pop that in. We had a viewer request about showing the Muggy meter on the web page, and so we are considering that. We're just having a difficult time trying to either replace something or add it to the menu. It would likely, if it is able to be done, live on the other weather resources section on our weather and traffic page at kxan.com. That location is full, but I was able to find one of those resources that could be removed because it's repeated somewhere else. So hang in there. This, I have to tell you, I think after, or maybe even before the pollen count, this graphic, the Muggy Meter graphic, is one of our more popular graphics. Sometimes we call it on the weekend the Jayla meter because she doesn't like humidity. So this is the current pollen count that we have starting today and going all the way out to Friday.
Wow, it doesn't seem to be too muggy this week.
Not
right?
today, no, because the front came in overnight. It's delivered a north wind, so the air is dried out. And whereas we had dew points yesterday in the 60s, today we have dew points in the 40s and 50s, and so the air is much drier.
Yeah, and speaking of the weather cooling up a little or cooling down a little bit this Sunday, can we talk a little bit about what kind of weather we can expect for this Super Bowl Sunday?
If there were people that were considering, I have one of my friends, as a matter of fact, the house I'm going to today will have two TVs going, one in the living room and one in their patio. We thought that if the patio is heated, that would be fine because by 5:30 today here, the sky is going to continue to be cloudy, and by 5:30, which is the time that the game starts, we'll likely have a temperature in the 50s with a north wind, so it'll feel chillier. Mm-hmm. In New Orleans, my goodness, they've got perfect weather. If they were having the game outside today, mm-hmm. then the folks that would be going would enjoy some sunshine and some fair weather clouds and a kickoff temperature in the lower 70s.
Wow,
that's perfect weather for fandom. It is not necessarily perfect weather for football players who like the cooler, who do appreciate more the cooler air, not the colder air, just the cooler air. So it'll be a nice weather day in New Orleans, and for those that just like the overcast and this crisp north breeze, it is your type of weather that we have today. We had several afternoons last week in the 80s with some sunshine. We tied a record at Mabry and set a record at Bergstrom yesterday, but no such records today.
And although it's not cool, super cold, at least it's not 90 degrees, and these players are not playing in that kind of weather, right?
That is correct.
And we do have lots of spots here in Central Texas where you can watch the games outdoors. I know we created a blog post of all the places available that you can go watch, and I recommend that 100% to enjoy this weather, right?
Indeed.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rich. Is there something else you'd like to share before we head out?
I have a blog that posted yesterday. It's about NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We just wanted to explain a little bit about what NOAA is, how it became to be NOAA, what it does. It's more than just highs and lows and precipitation totals and forecasts. And so there's a little bit of insightful information on that.
Yes, and that can be found on our website, kxan.com. And the title is The Many Benefits of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rich. It was a pleasure once again to have you this Sunday.
Thank you, Esme. I appreciate the time.
And that's all we have today on our First Warning Weather Q&A. We'll be back next Sunday, like we mentioned, with another one. Thanks for joining us.